So, controlling the streets of Gotham, running a company, and following an international criminal. How does it feel to be pretty much Batman, Z?
Wow, that is an intense first question. It's a lot, but I love it. It's one of the things where, things got really busy this year as we were launching TKO, and I was on Gotham, and it's just the thing where I have to remind myself that it's 10 years ago I would kill to do any one of these things, and so I just feel very lucky about it.
And now you're doing all of them, so.
Yeah.
All right, so something, we've only done one interview before this, so bear with us.
Yeah, no problem.
Our big intro question is, we're pretty much just hard-hitting journalists if you haven't figured that out by now. So question number 1, what is your favorite sandwich and why?
I really like an Italian sub. I like an Italian sub from this place in Santa Monica, and Italian subs are delicious. I think because it's all these cold cuts I never grew up with. So, yeah. Italian subs all the way.
That's my go-to sandwich. Like if I'm going to a deli or something. Yeah, it's because it's something that's delicious, but it's kind of hard to screw up. Like I haven't had one really screwed up yet. I'm a big sandwich guy.
Philly cheesesteaks also top 5. Philly cheesesteaks, those are some of my favorites. The place called Fat Sal's out here, Fat Sal's.
I have heard of Fat Sal's, yeah.
They do a sandwich that is kind of like, it's pretty messed up. It's basically like a Philly cheesesteak, and then they put mozzarella sticks on top of it because that's what you need on a Philly cheesesteak. And it's delicious. Yeah, that's my go-to. I'm kind of a big stress eater, where I try to eat my stress, and that's my go-to. That place.
Next time you're in Philly, we'll have to get it's called a Philly taco. You get a cheesesteak and then you wrap it. There's another pizza place down the street, and it's essentially like a Costco-sized slice that you wrap the cheesesteak in.
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
So what was the first interview you did? What was the sandwich that who was it, and what sandwich did they pick?
So it was Tim Seeley from Grayson and Nightwing. And his favorite was a summer sausage sandwich. It's something from the Midwest. And it legit was just like sausage on pieces of bread. Did he have any condiments, Jake?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Kind of judging him for that sandwich, but I also it sounds delicious. So.
Sorry, beef.
I had never met Tim. He sounds like a cool guy, so I feel like he would take this coolly that I just shit talked a sandwich for no reason.
I hope he does.
Tim, I can't wait to meet you someday.
Oh, great.
That's fine. Start the beef, dude. That's what we got to do. Then people will notice us.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to become the greatest rap beef of all time. The beef with 0 stakes, yes.
Oh, okay. So next question, I guess. How did the idea to found TKO come from, and what was the goal going in?
It was kind of a. So when I was growing up, I wanted to be a comic book writer, a comic book artist, and actually I kind of I think I learned to write because I wanted to be a comic book artist. And as I was drawing it, I was like, oh, I guess someone has to put these words in the bubbles. And I guess I'm here, so I'll do that. And that was kind of the first time I had ever like written a story before. And this was in, when I was between the ages of 9 and 15. And then I started getting into independent film and eventually TV, and that's what I ended up pursuing. But I still was always a comic book fan, and I always wanted to find a way to get back into comic books. And, I've staffed on TV shows for the last 5 years. So I was on Once Upon a Time for a couple of years, and then I was on the last 3 seasons of Gotham. And it was the last year when I was on Once Upon a Time, we took kind of like long lunch breaks. And some people would go drive someplace, and I'm a terrible driver, and I just would just walk everywhere. So I would walk around the neighborhood, and in the neighborhood was House of Secrets, which is this great comic book store in Burbank. And I kind of dropped out of comics for the last 4 or 5 years before that, and just walking into the comic book store and seeing all the new titles, and I don't know, there was just something really exciting. There was a cool energy to it that I think I realized how much I missed it. And around the same time, I reconnected with a friend and mentor, Salvatore Simeone, who is my co-founder and TKO CEO. And we had always talked about doing something in the entertainment industry, and he knew that I love comics, and he is a big comic book fan himself. And we said, well, if we're going to do something, let's do comics. Let's really look at it and see if there's a company that we could work on together. And TKO kind of came out of those conversations with him. I think very early on we said to ourselves, if we're going to do this, we have to do things differently. We can't kind of do what everyone else is doing. And that's kind of how we started looking at the comic book industry and what TKO's place within it was going to be.
So TKO is really trying to do something more modern and bold in the industry. I know you're not circumnavigating Diamond and things like that. If you could have one long-lasting effect on the market, what do you want it to be?
I just want more people to read comics. It's an art form that I love, and I think that creatively, the people working in comics as writers and artists right now, I do think creatively we're in a golden age, but the industry side of things and the distribution model has not really evolved to support them. And I think it makes it hard for people who are trying to get into comics or have, a passing interest in comics to pick up a comic book and feel like they can kind of jump right in. So, with TKO, a lot of the things that we looked at early on were how do we get new readers for comics? And that's part of the reason that we binge release our books, provide them in whatever format that people like. So if you're new to comics and you're just interested in picking up a series, you can pick up all 6 issues of our miniseries at once of our first 4 titles. And if you like individual issues, like the way that they're designed, you can pick those up, or you can do trade paperback or digital all at the same time. We don't kind of stagger out the releases between after the last issue hits the stands, we don't wait a bunch of time for the trade paperback to come out. They're all available at the same time. And that was part of the reason why we did the box set as well. So the 6 issues, I think I personally love single issues. It's the way that I grew up reading comics. But we found that a lot of people who are kind of new to comics, who don't have a short box, they don't know what to do with single issues. And so it's a real overcome for somebody to pick up single issues and try to figure out where to store them. So we wanted to make sure that if you were interested in, this kind of collector's box set, you could have some way to store your individual issues and put it on a bookshelf next to your other books, and it would still look great.
I was actually hoping you would talk about the box, because I was like, what do you think the origin story of something like that is? But now I totally get it, because I'm sitting surrounded by stacks of singles. Yeah. I have no idea where to put them.
And I think it's sometimes hard. You kind of lose them, or if they're in a short box, long box, you kind of forget that they are there. And, I think that for a lot of people who, and we found that there's just actually someone on Twitter today is just saying that they hadn't picked up comics in 10 years, and the box sets were just so attractive to them, they had to buy 2 of them. And it's like, I think we wanted to make sure that, first off, like all of our books are printed really high quality. They're printed oversized. They're about 1.25 inches taller than regular comic books. And that includes both the trades and the single issues. And we want a return to comics as like collector's items and art objects. And I think that there's a certain appeal because we put so much work into the design aspect of it that people who are, maybe not hardcore comic book collectors can still pick up the individual issues and appreciate them as works of art.
Yeah, I love that I texted Jake earlier that I love how they're oversized because I have huge hands. So I'm like trying to read these on the train and I'm already having issues on the train because I'm like, I don't want to like take up too much room, things like that. And I'm like, wow, this actually feels nice to hold.
Yeah. We just felt that as other companies were kind of cutting corners or reducing like the paper quality for their books, that we wanted to go in the opposite direction and really kind of they reminded me more of the kind of the deluxe versions of books that I grew up really enjoying,
So how does your publishing differ from the big 2 or Image or things like that? Do you approach the teams or do they come to you?
We can put together books in any way. So sometimes teams come to us fully formed. There's typically it won't be an entire team. It'll be like Joshua Dysart and Alberto Ponticelli, who did our murder mystery set in the homeless population of Venice, California, called Goodnight Paradise. That was a book that they had been kind of percolating for a long time. And so that team came together, they both kind of talked about the book together. And we knew that we wanted to bring together the team again from Unknown Soldier. And then I think we paired them up with Julia Brusco, our colorist. Mm-hmm. And then there were times where, with Sarah, Garth had his idea, pitched it to us. We pulled the trigger on it immediately. Sarah is about Russian female snipers on the Eastern Front during World War II. And we just loved that this was like a new way into a war story. And we were, we kind of looked through the different artists that we were fans of, and Steve Epting, his art style just really popped to mind. And so we went to him and we put together the rest of the creative team alongside him. So it can be any way. It's just whatever's right for the book.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
So something I've been curious about is it print on demand, or you do just large runs and then print
large runs? Okay. Large runs, yeah. I mean, I don't know how print on demand is financially feasible for anyone. It's just the cost per book is really high. So, and we felt confident about, selling the books. And so we printed a lot of them, and we just, I think maybe 2 months ago, we went into second printing for all the trades. So, yeah, I mean, I think you have to kind of print at higher volume. I think print on demand is a little tough.
So how different is it writing for like a TV show like Gotham or Once Upon a Time compared to writing a comic like Fearsome Dr. Fang?
Well, the thing about the writers' rooms, and so a writer's room for like a network TV show is probably about 10 people, maybe between 8 and 10 people. For something like Gotham, it's really serialized. So you're in the writer's room a good amount of time. And, you have writers all the time that you can access and pitch to, get notes from. It's a really super collaborative experience. I felt that this was kind of in between. Writing a comic book was something that was kind of in between that experience and my experience writing and directing independent films. So I wrote and directed 2 movies. One played at Sundance. One was a Bryan Cranston thriller that Sony released. And, when you're writing movies, typically it's a little bit more like you're by yourself writing and then turning into producers, and then they are giving notes. But writing comic book was kind of like a little bit more solitary. And then Sebastian Gerner, who's our editor-in-chief, he would really be the person that would weigh in, send us notes. But there's a lot of similarities. I mean, I feel like, certainly, I don't know that I would have been able to write a comic book if I hadn't had that much experience on the film and TV side. There's a lot of similarities and there's things that are different. The things that are different to me are the fact that just real estate on a page, how much dialogue is really necessary, and the speech balloons, how much of it can be carried by the images. And also the thing that it took me a long time to understand is that you can really only have one action per panel. So it's you can't say this person punches someone in the face, takes their gun and jumps out the window. That has to be 3 separate panels. And so that was kind of a little bit of a learning curve.
So how did you make your way into the film and TV industries?
So I graduated undergrad in film studies at Columbia, and that was a program that was not very production oriented. It was basically a lot of reading books and watching movies and writing papers. And I looked at the grad school. I looked at all these different grad schools just thinking, should I do this or not? And grad school is super expensive.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I think they start at $100K. So I just knew that wasn't something I was going to be able to do. So I made a schedule for myself. I just wrote, I committed to making a no budget short film every 6 months and then writing a feature film every 9 months. And I was going to do that until I had something break through. And it took a long time. It took I did 12 shorts over the course of 3.5 years. And my 11th short that was made for $600, shot it in my childhood home. My mom is in it. The actors were kids from the neighborhood. It got into Sundance in 2007. And that was really the first time where I felt like I got my foot in the industry. It was still a lot of work. Going from a short film to a feature was really hard. But, I think it was just, I wanted to try to learn by doing. And so, I had my short in Sundance. I met some people. I met a manager. He got me staffed on, me and my writing partner staffed on a TV show out in LA for 6 months. And then the writer's strike happened. I came back to New York and I just said, I don't care how small the budget is. I'm going to make a feature film in the next year. And that's what I did. I made my first feature, Children of Invention, which was a family drama. Played at Sundance in 2009. And the budget was, I think, $150,000. It was a really micro-budget feature, but that was kind of how I started. And then in 2012, I wanted to get back into TV, and I kind of did the same thing I did with my feature work. I made a schedule to write 3 pilots over the course of 6 months and booked a flight out to LA and tried to get staffed on a TV show. It was a complete bust that first year, but I sold that one of the pilots that I wrote. So at least in the TV world, I wasn't a complete unknown at that point.
Wow.
But I just think that, I feel like for somebody who works on their own a lot, which is, if you're an independent filmmaker or you're speccing out scripts, it's really easy to lose track of, it's really easy to let other things get in the way. So I was always very, very disciplined about, I just have to do this within this period of time. Otherwise, I really can't function. I just have to try to make a schedule and stick to it. And that's kind of how I've always worked.
Wow.
Saying it all together sounds really intense. I'm actually more laid back than that sounds.
No, but having those goals is admirable. Probably should start doing that.
Yeah, same.
So when working on a long form show based on well-beloved source material, did you feel like you had a lot of creative freedom with the characters and how you were able to tell your stories?
For Gotham, it was interesting because Batman was really my jam growing up, especially Frank Miller Batman. And so I went into it one of the first things I talked about in the meeting actually was Legends of the Dark Knight, that anthology series that I think it was around in the late 80s, early to mid 90s, and then I think it went away and then they rebooted it. But I loved the fact that there were times where Batman was only in like one page or even like a couple panels, and it was like all the stories of the people who populated Gotham, you know, good and bad, when Batman wasn't around. And like Gotham Central is kind of like that as well. And I just always found that those characters, the kind of villains of Batman, were as compelling to me as Batman himself. And so going into Gotham, where Bruce Wayne is such a young character, and it really is about the city of Gotham and Jim Gordon and the bad guy and the villains, you know, I felt like it was kind of the perfect job for me. And it also, you know, it's a nice tonally. It's such a interesting show. You know, Bruno Heller and who created the show, and John Stevens, the showrunner, Danny Cannon, the producing director. You know, it really is like a noir show, but it's serialized. A lot of it's from the point of view of the villains, who you grow to love. You know, Penguin and Riddler on that show, I mean, were fan favorites, played incredibly by Corey Michael Smith and Robin Lord Taylor. But there was a lot of freedom in the room, because I think early on I just had to think of it as an Elseworld story, where there's mythology and pieces of mythology that parallel the actual mythology from the comic books, but it kind of gets blown up and put back together again. And so we really never had, I mean, DC would weigh in and stuff, but they really gave us a lot of free reign to do what we wanted, which I really appreciated. And the main thing is, it's just, you know, it's 22 episodes. I mean, very few of those shows exist anymore. And it was just a lot of, every year we'd have to break 22 hours of story, which was just a really exciting thing to do, and also very intimidating at the beginning of every year.
And so you mentioned the Legends of the Dark Knight, and it looks like one of the arcs in the show was named the same way. Was that you, or was that something?
Which one was it?
I think it was like one of the like long spanning things. Have they had subtitles for the seasons?
Mm-hmm. We were really proud of the names of the episodes, which I think season 1 and season 2, they were a little bit more straightforward. And then we just kind of felt like, let's just get weird with it. Like, there's an episode where Solomon Grundy is pulling people's arms out and hitting them in the head with them, and the name of the episode is "Stop Hitting Yourself," which I couldn't believe we actually got on the page. There was one day where, like, I really love soup, and so I ordered 3 soups to the writer's room, and we sat down, and Charlie Houston was writing the episode. I was like, "What are you eating?" I was like, "It's one of my 3 soups," and he just wrote one of my 3 soups on the whiteboard and was like, "I am going to name this episode one of my 3 soups, and I'm going to figure out a way to put that in." And sure enough, there's a scene where there's 3 bowls of soup, and they're all different temperatures. And then a bad guy microwaves a bowl of soup until it's boiling, and then tries to torture somebody with it. So, you know, the show got. There were other ones. My last episode was called "They Did What," because it was just such a crazy episode. Oh, my favorite one is it was a Brian. It was by Brian and Steven, so Lillian and Wimbrandt, who wrote on the show for 2 years. And the name of the episode, because Joker calls. Well, I said Joker, but I guess his name is Jerome. Jerome calls a mandatory brunch meeting for all the villains, and so we just called it Mandatory Brunch Meeting, which is also the name of one of my favorite rappers' albums, Mayhem Lauren. Mandatory Brunch Meeting. It's a great song. You can check it out.
I'm gonna have to. Those are the incredible backstories that I needed.
Yeah, that's all we needed. That's all we needed. Favorite Gothamite.
But it was a really fun room, and it was really the showrunner, John Stevens, was an incredible person to work with, and it was super, super fun. and I kind of I think that's where I really got most of my confidence as a TV writer, was in that room.
Favorite Gothamite on Gotham or off?
I don't think I can play favorites like that, but I love Penguin and Riddler. I love Bruce and Selina. I love Jim Gordon. I think for me, the writing the bad guys was really, really fun, and I really gravitated towards that. I loved all the characters.
So I think you answered the first part of my next question, but the second part I have to know the answer to. How long did it take for you to develop a signature style, both artistically and literally? Because I've seen you post some major looks on the social medias, right. that pink number. That was yeah. I was like, I need one of those.
Yeah. The thing about, so I came up through indie film. It's you kind of do this thing. I literally wore jeans and a hoodie every day for 12 years. And then I was just going to the writer's room every day, and I was like, people are so sick. People are going to get so sick of this outfit. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to dress weirder and weirder every day until I was like, I'm just going to dress 1% weirder every day. And then in a year, my style is going to be super strange. And that's what I did. And now I've got a really weird style.
Did anyone ever comment on that?
Yes, it definitely. It was, when you start getting weirder and weirder and wearing it was also the look is more and more Asian. All the shirts are they don't have zippers. They're just weird Asian buttons. Yeah, it was getting weirder and also getting more Asian. I was like, let's just do it.
Just go all in.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I have this, it's like a floral hibiscus flower t-shirt hoodie, but it's also camo. So
nice.
Wherever I walk in that thing, people are like, the hell? But
I will say if it's nice. You go, it's especially with TKO going to conventions and stuff, at least people can recognize it. I honestly, this is going to sound really weird, but I think if I wore jeans and a hoodie, I would just look like every other Asian guy who's my height and my age. Whereas I think standing out a little bit is helpful as a publisher.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm a big white guy, so I just blend in at all these conventions. So I got to pop. This one actually comes from Twitter. Favorite superstition?
Favorite superstition? Oh my gosh. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know that I have any really. Let's see.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I don't, I have patterns that I do, but not really I'm not a super superstitious person. Yeah, I'm not this might not be superstition, but I really don't basically if I do something once and it's fine, I'm trying to think of the best example of it. I had a windowless office in Once Upon a Time the first year because I was a staff writer, the lowest level. And then the second year they offered me a window office, and I just once I commit to settling in somewhere, it doesn't matter if something's more comfortable. I'll just always stay and do whatever. So I had a windowless office for all 2 years of Once Upon a Time. Essentially behind the kitchen.
You just dig
I was just I would rather do anything but have to change anything about the way I'm doing things. I don't think I don't. I'm not. It's a terrible answer to that.
No, that's an interesting answer. Gives us more insight into the you.
All right. What inspired the characters in Fearsome Dr. Fang?
I think it was, Mike Weiss, my co-writer, and I. I've known him forever. He was, we went to college together, and we love the story, like Indiana Jones, these epic adventures, and I don't know, it was just around the time we were talking about like Fu Manchu and like that period of writing where it's like the Yellow Peril, bad guys, where it's like, oh, they kind of have magical powers and crazy mustaches and summon rats out of the ground. And then we're like, well, is there a modern way of doing that, but still retain the pulpy feel of the story, still make it exciting, but almost do like a revisionist take on the Yellow Peril stories? And so as we started getting into that, we were like, well, what if the Fu Manchu style bad guy from the Fearsome Doctor, called the Fearsome Dr. Fang, who's an international criminal mastermind, is actually just pretending to be a bad guy in order to infiltrate the criminal underworld. And so you get to have all the fun of like, oh, he seems like he's a mystical Mandarin style villain, but at the same time, like, actually all of his tricks and magic are explained by science. And we wanted to make it a three-hander where we had somebody from the West, and also we like the idea of Alice LaCroix, who's a female treasure hunter, to be along on the journey as well. So yeah, I think that was the original germ of the idea, and we just kind of built it out. And as we started talking about it more, we knew that we wanted to set it. We knew that we wanted the opening set piece to take place during the San Francisco earthquake, and so we kind of built the time period around that.
Can we expect any more Fearsome Dr. Fang anytime soon? Because I need more quotes like "hit him with a brick" or Irish.
Yeah, I would really like another one. It kind of is dependent on everyone's schedule, but it was always planned that we could do, a second arc for it.
Yeah, you really left that open-ended.
Yeah.
I got another hard-hitting one for you. Mm-hmm. Have you left any subliminal messages hidden in any of your work?
God, there must be somewhere. In any of the work, or in
anything you've done?
I think that there must be some stuff. I'd have to look through Seven Deadly Sins and Fearsome Dr. Fang. I feel like there were a couple kind of small Easter eggs that we had in there. But I think I would have to take a look at it. For Gotham, I mean, it was always trying to figure out ways where we could have a show where, my episodes, like, I always wanted to try to do stuff where, for people who are just watching the show, they could experience it, but for people who are super fans of Batman, that there would be like little winks, We essentially did like The Killing Joke, except it was Selena who was shot. And I think that for a lot of people who watch the show, they maybe just experience that as like a gut-wrenching, like, emotional gut punch at the end of an episode. But I think that there's also, originally I wanted him to be wearing the Hawaiian outfit from The Killing Joke, which ended up not working out. But yeah, we were always trying to figure out little like fun Easter eggs for people who are super fans of the Batman mythology. And I guess the same as Once Upon a Time, those characters, obviously they have existed for a long time before that show.
Well, as a DC Comics podcast, we got to ask something like this. Any DC character you'd like to write a comic or show or movie for?
Well, for TKO, I mean, I think for comic book work, I'm filled to the gills for comic book work. But yeah, I mean, TV stuff, like, I loved working on Gotham. I have an idea. I can't really talk about right now, but there's a character that I really love, and I would love to write for her. But we'll see. I mean, I've had one meeting about it. We'll see if I can have, this was like a year ago, but it's an idea that right now I'm working on this other show, but I might return to it in TV. I loved working for DC with DC television, and it was a really fulfilling thing to be on Gotham. So if I could work with, and I'm on another Warner Brothers show right now that I'm show running, and it's been great working with them. So, I think that there will be stuff down the line.
If you were to suggest one DC Comics story to get people into the universe, what would it be and why?
I always recommend Batman Year One. And I think it's because it's so grounded. And I think for people who, and it doesn't require a huge knowledge of the DC universe. It was one of the first comics that I read where I was like completely blown away by it. And I was like, this is a totally different tone than other comic books that I've read. The comic books I loved growing up were X-Men, especially like Dark Phoenix saga. But Batman Year One really was the one where I was like, I feel like the storytelling, the emotional through line of Batman and Jim Gordon are so clean, but also messy and like interesting and human. And when you look at it too, you're reading through it like it feels like such an epic story, but it's like 4 issues. It's really crazy how much story he packs into those 100 pages or whatever. I don't even think it's 100 pages. I actually just went back and got like whatever the DC Definitive Edition is, which is like super oversized hardcovers. And there's 2 versions of it in the box set. One is it printed on the original newsprint, and one is the recolored version. It's a really beautiful box set, but that's the one for me.
I'm gonna have to go try to find the definitive. I bought like the first full printing of it, the collection. And I was super stoked to be able to have that on my shelf. So our final question. Is there anything you've always wanted to talk about in an interview or on a podcast that people don't normally ask?
I mean, I usually want to talk about my favorite sandwich, but you guys covered it. So
That's what we do.
No, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think the main thing for me is that I think it's really easy when you are, and this is something for like young creators or creators who are trying to work in whatever field, whether that's TV or film or comics. I think it's really easy to get kind of jaded and to get frustrated, and it is hard to break into all these industries and to feel that you're doing your best creative work. But at the same time, like, I feel that there's never been a better time than to be working in the creative field. There's never been as much access to other collaborators. And I do think that like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's never been as easy to find other people who want to do what you do or could collaborate with you. And crowdfunding and Kickstarter, like, it's really an interesting time. And I almost feel like I did this during the really hard years before any of that stuff existed. But I just feel like I want to believe that this is a true golden age creatively in comics. It certainly is in television. And I think that for young creators, I just want them to take heart and not feel hopeless about getting a foot in the door. That there are possibilities if you really open up your mind to the different pathways that you have, just by virtue of growing up and living in the time period that we live in.
Holy shit. That was possibly the best answer I could have ever gotten. We're both very big on positivity in comics just because there's been many years of negativity on across all platforms. So hearing something like that from someone who is highly successful is, I feel like, going to be very important to a lot of people.
Cool.
So I don't have any more questions, but where can people find you on social media?
You can find TKO at TKO Presents across all social platforms. So at TKO Presents on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. We're very active on Twitter, and we post a lot of kind of like sneak peeks of artwork on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. You can find me at the Tze Chun, so at TheTzechun on both Instagram and Twitter, and I'm pretty active on there as well.
Yeah, and seriously, thank you for coming on the show. If you haven't read anything from TKO yet, I seriously highly suggest it.
If you go to tkopresents.com, it's a great way to stock up on our first wave of titles. In our second wave, we have the first ever Jeff Lemire, Gabriel Walta collaboration called Sentient. We have the first ever Roxane Gay, Ming Doyle, Jordi Belair collaboration called The Banks. We have a great MMA thriller written by Natalie Chaidez, drawn by Andy Ballinger and colored by Daniela Miwa, called Pound for Pound. And we have a really cool survival horror story called Eve of Extinction. It was written by Stephen and Salvatore Simeone, drawn by Nick Varela and Isaac Goodhart, and colored by Ruth Redmond. So tkopresents.com. Yeah.
Seriously, thank you so much for this.
Yeah, it was really great.
Thank you guys. This was really fun.